question which was again related to chlorpyrifos. And as Laura has already mentioned that as such nothing has changed with regards to black pepper. But there are still exporters who are asking these questions that how do we handle it? So one final comment, from you, will help them to, come at peace, because there has been too much of marketing on this aspect and too many emails being said. And the fact remains, as you've explained, that, nothing has changed. I mean, you were to comply before, you have to comply now. So, just few comments, if you could,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that it would be extremely important for our industry to move away from the use of chlorpyrifos on black pepper. The entire world seems to be taking strides away from this chemical. The European Union has banned it, the United States has banned it, and many other nations around the world are banning the use of this chemical. So the time is now for us to work as an industry to stop using chlorpyrifos. As it relates to the ban in the United States, I do not suddenly expect to see the majority of black pepper being imported into the United States will be tested by our government, and that there will be immediately a huge regulatory challenge with it. I think there is some of a leeway, some of a period of time for us to be able to come into compliance with the requirements. But you can expect to hear from your customers. You can expect to hear from your customers that they want to understand what you're doing in your supply chain to make sure that it is free from chlorpyrifos. They may be requiring testing as well. So while I do not expect to see significant governmental enforcement in the short term, now is the time to start moving away from the use of the chemical and be prepared that you will receive questions from your customers about this.
Thank you very much. So you've heard her that, the elephant is there in the room. It is up to you, you have to align. And I think the best way would be to talk more to your customers, because customers who are importing in the US are best placed to tell you what has to be done. I understand there are going to be costs of testing, there are going to be costs of segregation, and it has to be a one-to-one discussion for now. And in the long term, we have to move away from it. Sir, there was one question on how is Griffith, or how can one help farmers or tell farmers to tackle with climate change, because climate change is becoming a reality. Today we see the north of Vietnam is practically witnessing a cold wave. Today temperatures in Hanoi have dropped close to 7 degrees. Where cassia is growing up north, temperatures are below 5 degrees. And, metabolism of our tropical trees stops below 10 degrees. A lot of stress is generated. On the other side, when you see higher temperatures, when they go beyond 35 degree, 37 degree, we see temperature stress also happening. Now, these are things which farmers cannot do an intervention themselves as such. Or are there any things that they can do which can help them at least take care that their crops are not affected by climate change?
Right. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Actually, this question I can answer because it's a question, the scope of this question is very large. So first of all, let's look at it from a global point of view. In a typical, plate of a meal which is consumed, pepper or other spices, the contribution of those is very, very small. So the real issue comes so far as climate change. It comes on other food products, mainly the meat, especially beef, supposed to be the highest contributor. So the focus should be on those industries so far as agricultural raw materials are concerned. If you arrange the emissions from the production of various food products, spices and herbs would be somewhere at the lower end, and big contributors, like I said, would be the meat industry, followed by many other production systems which are highly mechanized and which use huge amounts of chemicals and fertilizers. So far, but that is from a global point of view. However, as members of this industry, we also have a responsibility to see what best we can do in the spices and herbs that we source. If you consider the supply chain of a typical spice, you will find that agriculture contributes to about 40-45% of the overall emissions of greenhouse gases that is there in the supply chain. So if you take right from the farm all the way up to the consumer, I'm not saying the consumer, but at least the final processor, you will see that agriculture contribution is about 40%. And among that 40%, the highest contributor, almost 80% of that 45% comes from application of nitrogenous fertilizers. So as a company, we should support farmers in reducing the application of nitrogenous fertilizers. So this is from a very, very tactical point of view. However, as a strategy, what we all need to do, first step in controlling this problem is measuring. And there are a number of protocols available which can be applied, and number of good consultants who are experienced in this. And with the help of their expertise, we can measure the emissions at various stages of the supply chain, like growing, warehousing, manufacturing, shipments. In all these components, how much of greenhouse gas is being generated, and you can follow the 80-20 rule, identify which components are high, and then have plans to tackle them. How do you tackle them? Because we are talking about agricultural emission, we have to provide training to the farmer, provide incentives to the farmers for taking the positive steps, support them wherever they need credit for buying these more eco-friendly inputs, and so on and so forth. And once this is done, I'm sure we will be able to do our bit in this fight against global warming.
Right. Thank you, sir. Quickly, some small things which farmers can do, because we are also very active into the farming process, and we work with several companies such as yours also. See, when it is getting very hot in the summer months, essentially when we talk about sustainability, we are saying that do intercropping. Don't use cement poles or dead poles. Try to use live poles or live trees. By doing that, you would be giving good shade to your pepper plants when the temperatures soar. When the temperatures soar, if you are not having, natural rain-fed area, try to use as much as irrigation as possible. Yes, water costs, power costs, but by doing that additional expenditure, you would save your crop and save the yields by a large factor. So you have to. We've seen in Vietnam, in the years of drought, Vietnam is still able to produce because Vietnamese farmers actively do irrigation and put enough water in those dry months. So keep your farms irrigated. In the high rainfall months, I think drainage is very important. When the prices of pepper fall down, farmers do not look at gardening. They allow weeds to grow. That stops drainage. So along the sides of the trees, it should be well drained. And on the or near the poles, allow the different cropping or weeds to grow, which keeps the temperature also down. So there are several small things that the farmers can do to fight against climate change. Of course, they have to look at a model farm, or what we should propagate, that okay, we must try to bring farmers and demonstrate to them model farms which are part of sustainability activity, and see how those farmers are able to keep their farms still doing well in the face of climate change also. Because we have seen in Vietnam, some farms are doing really excellent. They also face the same heat, they face the same erratic rainfall, but they are able to generate good yield because those farmers were active and they took certain steps. Now, the farmers who could not take steps, perhaps they were not informed or they did not know what has to be done. So maybe information needs to be propagated over there. So, and as Mr. Rao said, we have to work together as an industry to look at fertilizer, to look at natural ingredients, and whatever we can do as a small part for the pepper industry, to help them to, yes, it's a larger question. I mean, whatever happens, one cannot change, or just the pepper industry cannot change climate change as such. It's going to be the larger base, or globally it has to take place, but we can add another small bit. There was a question on when people, from Brazil, that there is enough and good demand which is rising, and for this, do or does the panel think that Brazil is really placed well or positioned to capture that demand? So, sir, would you like to throw some light, or I'll take this?
Yeah, like you also said, we find that Brazil has done a lot of improvement in the way they process. They grow the pepper. A lot of work, a lot of increase in the acreage, and a lot of good farmers who have replaced their coffee plantations with pepper. However, the biggest challenges we as a buyer, because almost 60% of what we consume is in the US, and we have tried in the past to source from Brazil. So we face two problems. The first one is that there is no processing capability in Brazil to meet the global food safety and quality standards, including not sufficient steam sterilization capacity, and so on and so forth, which makes it very difficult for a company who is based in the consuming country to actually import directly from Brazil. Secondly, also the weather and the drying practices. Also, we feel that there is a little bit of risk in the way drying is done by using, the mechanical drying, where they use the burn the nuts, I think the macadamia nuts or whatever nuts. We feel that there is a contamination of PAH, as well as some kind of allergen also could get. So sun-dried Brazil pepper is very good. We don't have any risks. So these are the two challenges which we face. If Brazil can address these issues, if the industry in Brazil can come together, and with the cooperation of buyers, we would also be more than happy to contribute. If these things are addressed, then definitely Brazil can become value-added exporters to the developed countries.
Right. So finally, there was a question on will the pepper price increase? As I said in the beginning, we cannot give guidance. We have just explained to you the forces acting on the prices of pepper, and it is dynamic. Also, we presented, and some hints have been given that yes, the pepper prices need to go slightly higher to allow the farmers to start planting again. And this may happen. This may happen this year. This may happen next year, because if the prices rise, it helps the entire industry, or at least the growing industry, to make pepper farming slightly more sustainable. Of course, we do not want prices to be too low, which makes pepper farming unsustainable. We do not want pepper prices to be too high, which creates problem at the demand end, because consumers, consumers may not have a direct impact, immediately, but in the long term, the industry feels the impact. And once the industry starts feeling the impact, then they start changing recipes, then they start looking at innovative ways that can they reduce the pepper in the part of the recipe and replace it by some other spice or do other things. So on the other third front, we are having innovative uses of pepper. Pepper oil is helping people reduce smoking also. There are companies advertising pepper oil which support them to reduce their smoking addiction. So there are very innovative uses of pepper coming up, and demand is growing, and certainly there is a bright future. What is missing is, I believe, a lot of communication with the growing community. When we do our surveys in Vietnam, we find 90% of our farmers are still, in a category where they would struggle to get this information from an international level, and that is where the domestic organizations, whether it is VPA or the exporters organization in Indonesia or the Brazilian exporters or individual companies who are working with the farmers, it becomes their responsibility to disseminate more information to the farmers and train them. If all the buyers of pepper and exporters come together and even decide that I want to train 100 or 200 farmers, I think we will be able to cover a significant portion of the farming community for the betterment of the entire trade. So you please have your own guesses of the pepper price. We cannot comment. There was another one question on what is the new normal. By this, we essentially meant is that yes, we are behind. The pandemic is behind us in a larger sense. The new normal essentially means that we did not have such high freights before, and now we have high freights, and maybe they will reduce, but they will still remain because shipping lines have now learned how to come together as a group and charge customers, and for their benefit, good for them. So I don't see, personally, my view is that freights won't suddenly crash to pre-pandemic levels. Inflation is here to stay. It is not going to suddenly change. Suddenly fertilizer prices are not going to fall by 50%, which they were before the pandemic. Suddenly labor costs are not going to reduce. Today it is, farmers are struggling. Pepper berries are drying and becoming red, but they don't find labor to pluck the berries. So these are the challenges which were or which have come up after last 2 years of stress. And the new normal also here is, the consumer behavior is also changing. E-commerce has got an enormous amount of raise over here, and as people go on to internet more and they get more informed, consumers become more sharp, and they make industries to align. So that is the new normal we are talking about. Of course, these are the factors which have come into play in the last 2 years. That is what we meant by the theme. There is no other question, just that, as I said in the beginning, certain attendees have raised this concern that the numbers perhaps that were shown were underballed. What I am again trying to explain is that we are going to revisit those numbers. We are not publishing those numbers in a big way. We made a presentation. There was not enough time for doing a survey of, because lockdowns were there, etc. We are going to talk to all the government agencies again, and we're going to revisit them, and then we will, maybe come out and publish it. So there is no hurry, and what we must look at is the difference. That is what we were trying to explain, and that is what matters the most, because we are looking at a year to year. Base may change. If the base was changed, it was changed for the previous year also, and changed for this year also. So we are supposed to perhaps look at the difference that has happened from number to number. So I see a lot of comments and people saying that, that perhaps what Vietnam is saying of 162,000 tons is way below. It would be somewhere close to 180, 190 or 200, whatever. But yes, I mean, nothing stops the industry to assume their own numbers or make their own estimates. One must understand, if this year's number was reduced, so was last year's number reduced. So carry forward plus crop together, put together, there is enough availability is what they were hinting at. And so I would like to end the panel discussion to that. And I would like to hand over to the director again for a vote of thanks and closing the session. Over to you, madam.
So sorry. Okay, Jasvinder, I will just show the global scenario just now, market scenario. Of course the data is still not confirmed yet because we will be receiving changes from member countries still, but we will just publish it just to inform all the participants. I just want to bring your attention to the numbers, figures highlighted, which are the for IPC countries. For black and white pepper, you can see from the figures of it. But this one is not actual yet. But we will discuss it later again once we receive the numbers from the countries here. And on that note, I would like to thank all participants and of course our distinguished speakers for having spent time from your busy schedule to join us for today's webinar. We hope that you get information and insights from all the presentation just now, and thank you very much. And I hope we hope that we will be having a more series of webinar this year, inshallah, and maybe in June and also September. And with that, I thank everyone and good night from Jakarta, and thank you very much.
Thank you and good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Take care and stay safe, yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you.